Hello, BookTube. I've got a comic book video for you today, belated from yesterday. Wednesday, is usually when Michael K. Vaughan and I do our Epic Comic Book Wednesday. But he was not available, and it turned out I wasn't available either, so there was no comic book talk yesterday. And there won't be any Epic Comic Book collaboration today. We'll have to wait until next week. Uh, but I still wanted to talk about comics for the week, just a bit. So I took a stroll through my long boxes, those long white cardboard boxes that comic book fans use to store their single issues. My long boxes are not up to code. I do not have anything. Comic book fans will put a cardboard board, and they'll put that inside an archival mylar bag, and they'll put the comic in there so that it's bagged and boarded, as the saying goes. And none of my comics are bagged and boarded, of course they aren't. They're all worn from much use. But I took a tour through there, and I thought we'd go through a few comics just at random until next week. So the first one is part two of a team up. This is Image Comics, and this doesn't have a title or anything like that. This is the two of the most successful non-Marvel and non-DC quasi-superhero type characters to come out of the 80s and 90s. There's Eric Larson's The Savage Dragon, a green fin-headed creature who is found in a field. And he grows up to be a cop. He's superpowered. He's invulnerable. He's super strong. He's got a normal human attitude because he was raised by humans. And there's Hellboy, who likewise we meet as a child, brought from another dimension. Obviously a netherworld type being with a prehensile tail and red skin and horns that he shaves off, who also is raised by humans. Long before the Savage Dragon, raised by humans in World War II era, so that he also is a fairly normal type guy, even though he is not human. And fans clamored for a long time for these two to meet and team up, so they did in a two-part adventure. Doesn't have, it has Eric Larson artwork, which can be really good. It's a bit of an acquired taste, a lot more now than it was then. But the main thing here is that the villain, an ape with a brain and a bowl, does what fans wanted anyway, which is to mind control Savage Dragon and Hellboy to make them fight each other. And Mike Mignola collaborated on this story with Eric Larson. Just in case you're wondering whether or not Eric Larson stacked the decks in favor of his own character, he did not. The simple truth is that these two are not physically matched. They both look monstrous. But it's immediately made explicit in this comic that they aren't physical equals at all. Dragon says, "Look, I don't know about you, but I can rip a school bus in half without breaking a sweat. Are you going to be able to hold on for a few rounds?" And Savage Dragon cannot do that. Dragon actually says, "I'm really sorry about this. I thought we'd be more evenly matched." I don't know how much I agree with that. I guess in theory I do, but you've got panels like this where Hellboy is striking Savage Dragon with his. Let me see if I can show you a visual. Hellboy has a normal hand, but he also has a supernatural metal armor hand. And this thing, if he hits Savage Dragon with it, it should hurt him. But that's the main thing. You get more great Eric Larson artwork here as they reluctantly team up. They're fighting each other without really wanting to, and that's all that fans wanted. And I think fans were maybe kind of hoping that they'd be a little bit closer. I myself loved it. I like Hellboy as a downtrodden hero to the extent that such a creature can be. Then we have an issue of Green Arrow. I would ordinarily not buy a comic like Green Arrow because he's a guy who shoots arrows. He's a guy who gets really small. He's a guy who runs really fast. He's a guy who turns green when he's angry. He's a guy who turns really small. He's a guy who wears armor. I want more than that. I want more than that. But I got this issue because I am fascinated by this kind of retroactive storytelling. There was invariably in comic books, in superhero comic books, someone will come out with a great thing, a miniseries, standalone thing, comic book, an individual storyline, where events happen. Fans love it, they embrace it, and invariably the lesser imaginations later on will go back to that to try and mine that story for ideas of their own rather than come up with anything original. You see this all the time. A character in Kingdom Come, a character named Gog or Magog is introduced, so of course we're going to get him down the line in his own in continuity when he should just belong in that story. Same thing when you show the future of a character, very much so. And Frank Miller's miniseries Dark Knight Returns, Batman Dark Knight Returns, shows the future of Batman and the future of Superman, and also in an aside in a couple of moments, the future of Green Arrow, Oliver Queen, DC superhero who has gimmick arrows that he fights crime with. And the future of Oliver Queen is grim because he only has one arm. He's lost his arm. And in Dark Knight Returns, he severely implies that he lost it to Superman. Maybe that Superman ripped it off or burned it off or something like that. And there's a moment here in this issue of Green Arrow where the writer, who's the writer here? Chuck Dixon, is clearly indicating that moment. Green Arrow, one of his hands is trapped in a device. And Superman wants to save him, and the way you do that is to tear the arm off or sever it or whatnot. And Green Arrow doesn't want him to do this. Here is Chuck Dixon arguing against Dark Knight Returns by having Green Arrow escape that fate by seeming to blow up the plane and kill himself. And the whole of the issue is just other characters talking about him being dead or learning about his death. Here's Batman and Robin in the Batcave. Batman marking Green Arrow deceased. Notice that when Superman dies, Batman does not do that. But here he's willing to just say, well, the plane blew up. He blew up in full sight of Superman, so we can be assumed that he's dead. And he gives a neat little summary. We were actually a lot alike. Sometimes I envied him. He lost his family when he was young. He came from old money. But he was always himself, masked or unmasked. He was the same. The Playboy image wasn't a masquerade with him. He lived the way he wanted to. I can only hope he died the same way. Of course, he didn't die the same way. He died strapped to a bomb in a plane. We get Black Canary, the lady love of his life, who's told this storyline in very dignified, quiet panels there. And all the way at the very end, we get the send-off, and it's a ghostly image of Oliver Queen as Robin Hood, with Little John and Friar talking all around him like that. I thought it was really, really interesting. This is artwork by Rodolfo DiMaggio. Of course, it didn't take. Death never does in comics, although the method by which Green Arrow is resurrected was thought up by an actor who just really liked him. The method by which he's resurrected is so torturous. Oh my god. Then we can move back a few decades to this. This is Spider-Man number 71, where Spider-Man faces the mutant Quicksilver, who is hoping to renovate his image with mankind. You don't need much more than a motivation than that. He's hoping to motivate. See, he sees a headline for the Daily Bugle: Spider-Man, a wanted criminal, and thinks, well, maybe I can redeem myself if I bring him in. So he does. Spider-Man is swinging through town when Quicksilver, whose speed allows him to defy gravity and run up the side of a building, look at that depth right there, classic John Romita Sr., confronts him. uh, and they fight each other. That's just it. That's all. That's all. They just fight each other. Quicksilver says, "You think your speed can compare with mine? Don't you realize that to me you are moving in slow motion? I can strike you a dozen times before you even feel the first." That is actually true. Spider-Man is not invulnerable. Quicksilver would easily be able to defeat him. Easily. But no, it's Spider-Man's book. So instead of just beating the daylights out of him until he's unconscious, which would happen in about 5 seconds, he decides to run around him just in a whirlwind. And this gives Spider-Man the opportunity to stick out one arm with his spider strength and knock the wind out of Quicksilver. Now, any of you who are familiar with physics will know that that would not happen. The exact opposite would happen. But it was certainly worth the 12 cents for me. so I what's the next? Oh, we've got another Spider-Man here. This is Spider-Man number 500 with artwork not by John Romita, but by John Romita Jr., by John Romita's son, who also does great Spider-Man artwork. Just fantastic. We get a montage of Spider-Man fighting his all of his most signature villains. There's a 2-page spread that I want to show you here. Yeah, look at that. It's just incredible. I was reading this issue and I was thinking, when it came out, I got this, and I was reading this issue and thinking, well, you know, that is just incredible. No matter what, John Romita Jr. is certainly making a name for himself as a Spider-Man artist, even though the greatest Spider-Man artist of all was his dad. And then the story ends, and Doctor Strange presents Spider-Man with a little casket, a little cask there, that allows him 5 minutes. And Doctor Strange does not explain what that means. And Peter Parker goes up on the roof and opens the casket. He opens the little mystical thing, and the artwork changes. It goes from John Romita Jr. to John Romita Sr., drawing Spider-Man for just about the last time. Spider-Man Peter Parker goes up on the roof and opens that casket and gets 5 minutes with his Uncle Ben. And another retrospective of all these villains. And it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Because Uncle Ben has not returned from the dead. Everyone else returns from the dead, but Uncle Ben is still dead. Then another Spider-Man here. This is The Amazing Spider-Man number 533. This is connected with Civil War, which had a cover design like this, where you get a cover image on top there and just a blank on the bottom. This was the Civil War storyline in which the government decides that all superheroes must register with the government. They'll get a pension, but they don't act on their own. They're not vigilantes anymore. And if they don't do it, if they don't agree, then they get apprehended, just as enemies to the people. And Iron Man is in favor of this government stipulation, just like he is in the Captain America Civil War movie. And Spider-Man is on board at first and decides that since this is the new way of the world, since this is going to be reality, the way he can demonstrate that is to unmask himself in public. So there won't be any secret identities anymore. There won't be any vigilante activity anymore. He tells the whole world, my name is Peter Parker and I've been Spider-Man since I was 15 years old. And the whole world reacts. J. Jonah Jameson at the Daily Bugle is furious. What does he say? I gave him such a hard time. As much as he was a pain in the neck, he was like a son to me. I gave him his start as a photographer, bought his pictures even when the composition sucked. In a world built on lies, I thought he's the only one who's always been straight with me, the last honest guy in town. And it was all a lie. I guess he must have thought it was pretty funny. Must have thought I was pretty stupid, having him in here all the time and never knowing. Probably spent whole days laughing at me. And the whole rest of the world notices as well. You've just got these montages of all of the world learning, of criminals, for instance, learning, the whole world learning who Spider-Man's identity is. A dumb thing, since, you know, you keep a secret identity in the superhero world because you're afraid your enemies will, if they learn your identity, attack your loved ones, which immediately happens in the storyline, leading to one of the most reviled Spider-Man storylines of them all. This is the price you pay for the Stan Lee virus. When you introduce this kind of verisimilitude, you run yourself out of story. The American Superhero Registration Act, the whole events of Civil War, would never have ended. They had to end, of course. They have to end. You have to get back to business as usual as superheroes. But if you're going to talk about the real world, well, in the real world, the government would not allow this. No government would. And the superheroes who turned on their compatriots in order to kowtow to the government would stick at it forever. They would never have a moment of truth where they realize they're wrong. Just have to go with it. That's all. Then we have this is issue number 2 of a miniseries called Superman's Secret Origin, in which who was it? Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, the writer Jeff Johns, the artist Gary Frank, decide to tell Superman's story again in a multi-part miniseries. I have the collected volume over there on the shelf. I didn't buy all of these volumes as they were coming out, but I did buy number 2. Because in number 2, Jeff Johns goes a long way towards reversing the dumb decisions of a DC corporate event from decades ago by reintroducing the Legion of Superheroes. In a really stupid comic book event called Crisis on Infinite Earths in the 80s, the writers at DC, the home of Superman, hopped up on too much cheap Michelob, decided to rewrite the continuity of DC Comics. And in that continuity, one of the many changes they made is that Superman is never Superboy. Clark Kent puts on his costume as Superman, as a man, in Metropolis for the first time. So he doesn't spend years fighting crime in Smallville as Superboy. And the minute I saw that change, I thought, well, okay, but I've got a Siemens chest entirely full of back issues of Superboy and Adventure Comics, in which Superboy has adventures with the Legion of Superheroes, starting with the first one where his very existence inspires them to be. You've just retroactively written all of that out of continuity. Superboy was never part of the Legion of Superheroes. And a later writer, Paul Levitz, tried to fix that in a weird kind of way. Here, Jeff Johns tries to fix it even more straightforwardly by just having the Legion as part of Superboy's life. Just have him be there. Have him meet the Legion on their own in Smallville as a boy. And I like it, of course. I like it. He has a wonderful moment here. He's at the table talking about his adventures with Ma and Pa Kent. And he's wearing his costume under his street clothing, which didn't happen after Crisis on Infinite Earths. And he says, I want to be sure I'm ready to fly if they show up again, when they do. It was so cool, Pa. It was the first time I could be myself, you know? I can't do that with anyone here. No one else can fly. And just as he says that, see, the panel starts to shake because something is crashing to Earth. A rocket is crashing to Earth. And there we have Superboy, and he walks up to the ship and hears "Arf," because that is Jeff Johns saying, not only am I bringing the Legion here into this mainstream continuity, but the thing inside that rocket is your old dog, Crypto. So, let's do a little more. Let's do a few more here. We have a special issue here. John Byrne and Chris Claremont, Star-Lord. But not the Star-Lord you know from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is a different character completely. But this is a collaboration, a whole book-length collaboration between Chris Claremont and John Byrne, the writer Chris Claremont and the author, the artist John Byrne, who would go on to enormous success on the X-Men. And you bought this for $1.50. It has almost no ads. In fact, I don't think it has any ads. You know, it's just great artwork, one page after another. And when the main feature is done, we get a backup feature with artwork by Michael Golden. And then when that backup feature is done, it's only a few pages. And when that backup feature is done, we get another backup feature uh, of Doctor Who with artwork by Dave Gibbons, who would go on to be famous for The Watchmen. The Fourth Doctor, of course. So not bad for $1.50. Then we have Fantastic Four. There's Fantastic Four King Size Special number 5. A whole bunch of action here. We're told in the front, where does it say here? Not a single reprint. There isn't a backup feature here that reprints. Instead, we get we do get a backup feature with the Silver Surfer, drawn by Jack Kirby. And we get lots and lots of individual page pinups. In this case, the Fantastic Four, but also the Inhumans and the Black Panther, who are all in this issue. There's Black Bolt, King of the Inhumans, and Gorgon. They're all in this issue facing a character who can manipulate emotions, and it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. I have, of course, as you can see, read it to pieces. I think that's all that I have the strength for. So I could do this. I pulled out a big stack of stuff when I was going through the long boxes, but we'll have to do that again the next time we miss an Epic Comic Book Wednesday. So I'll save the others for some other day. But I'm gonna stop for now. But we'll be back next week with more comic stuff. Thank you, BookTube.